Everyone,
go.
thank you so much for joining us today for the second series of Mr. Luca Sutto, composer extraordinaire for the International Euphonium Summit Living History series, as we're finding our way in this world together with Luca and with amazing artists, composers, directors, conductors, organizations from around the world. Really cool. Oh, I didn't even get to talk to you about on the podcast. So those that are listening to the podcast and have made it, thank you for joining us here on this video, this premiere and showcase for Luca Sutto. Tomorrow, I get to interview my first Australian from down under. So that's really awesome. I've been able to open up some time frames, and I've got a few really amazing Australian euphonium players and composers alike. So that's really exciting. So as with every composer, artist, and just amazing, from young euphonium artists, collegiate artists, to professional, international. You know, we want to share your journeys, and currently we have our guest, Luca Sutto.
Hey, thank you very much for inviting me again.
Absolutely. And just to recap for those that aren't on the podcast, amazing stuff. So if you want to see or read the transcripts, go over to our website, we'll leave the link below, and you can sign up to get a free transcript every single week of one of our amazing conversations behind the scenes. You won't get to see some of the really cool sneak peeks that I send over to composers like Luca Sutto, like we've done on this particular live, but we do get to talk about works that are being worked on currently. Like, I think you said 4 that you're currently working on right now.
1, 2, 3. 3 at the moment. I hope they're gonna stay and remain 3, but yeah, probably 4.
So if you didn't get to hear the podcast, I'm gonna put a spoiler out there. There might be a future project in collaboration very soon, and if you get to hear that and you do get to know what it is, write it down below. See if who can spot that out there, or if you're coming over from the podcast. It's pretty awesome. It'd be really awesome. Who'd be up for that? But nonetheless, be sure to subscribe, like, follow, share, all that good stuff, or just even like this video, share it out as we cover Luca's journey into amazingness and picking up with musicology. Or rather, non-musicology.
That's gonna become a meme.
Oh man. So what was it like stepping into, what was your first take of, I know you said in our first conversation that you stuck with it for that semester, but what was that moment when you're like, this is definitely not what I want?
Well, I mean, it wasn't that serious, to be honest. I mean, I was just following and attending the classes and everything. And honestly, I'm also interested in this kind of things. But, you know, when you're like 20 years old, you just want to play and that's it. So probably it was a bit not the, I don't know, it was more like a decision that I didn't really think over quite. But yes, I think at some point I just figured that I didn't want to become to work in an archive and doing like a library kind of job, right? Library related jobs, you know. I wanted to play and to compose, and that's what was my call, right?
So what was your next step? I mean, did you declare yourself as a musicology major, or like your focus at first?
Well, what do you mean by that? Sorry, I didn't
No,
really
not a
understand.
problem. So did you choose musicology as just a course, or did you choose it as a
No, no.
clear choice
Yeah,
first?
well, to be honest, there was it wasn't really a course, so to say, like a major, because it wasn't available in that university at that time. I don't know about that like now, but I remember it was like I don't even know how to translate it from the Italian education system to the US education system, but for sure it was something related to humanistic and specialized in musicology. That was something like that, in that direction. Definitely not a major though.
You know, coming to think of all the conversations I've had with all the amazing international artists from around the world, I even forgot to share something on the podcast before. And for those that are watching now, head over to the podcast after this. It really is behind the scenes. I'm going to be able to share something pretty extraordinary with Luca post this actual like recording here live as we are viewing. So I'm going to make a note really quick because I have a really interesting thing that happened this last week with an amazing individual. So sneak peek, kind of a teaser for you, Luca. So going from musicology and like academia and starting your composing and your just playing in general, going from the keyboard you think your dad stole to
I'm
so
so glad he can't speak English.
you know, it's gonna be amazing when all this is like instantly translated.
I really hope not.
Maybe just hide this post. Um, oh man, if you don't know what we're talking about, check out our first in series for Luca. That's really amazing birthday gift. Right, that was your birthday gift.
It's the 24th of February this time still.
Oh man. Okay, so yeah, if you don't know what we're talking about, go over to the first series interview and take a listen and watch. It's really awesome. And what was your stepping into that the atmosphere of the conservatory and getting to dive in to the curriculum and formal composition? How is that transition from a small village to that?
I remember one thing very clearly, that when I first enrolled in the conservatory, it was my first year, same time with musicology. We used to have like a small digital piano in one of the musicology rooms. And before classes, sometimes I was just going there and playing on, some tunes or something like that. And I remember after a couple, probably of months or something like that, it was a matter of months, a friend of mine made a joke about that and said that, look, is really thinking about the fingerings now. I wasn't doing it before. I was just playing with whatever fingers. And so I think it was good for me. I felt really somehow not only welcomed, but also I was really needing and craving this structured work on piano, before composition even, because I started composition after my 6th year of conservatory. So I really needed at that point of my life to have like a guide and someone who could really tell me, you know, how to read music, how to place fingers on the piano, these whole things, all these things where I really felt like it was an important part of my life. And then, yes, I think after that, for quite some time, I would say 2-3 years, the first 2-3 years were really great. It was like mind-blowing. Oh my God, is this music? Like there's a lot of new things to learn, a lot of new things lot of new pieces and so on. And I really also got really much better, improved a lot at piano and so on. Yes.
That's amazing. So those that aren't privy to that first interview, we'll leave the link below because we talk about how Luca has been raised up and he can recall really amazing sequences. And we talked about video game music, movie music, and all this playing by ear and figuring everything out. It's really awesome. So for context, please take a listen, take a minute or take some time to go back into that first conversation and bring yourself up to speed with Luca and his journey with composition and piano, and just the ability to grasp something with a different perspective than most. So it's really intriguing. So that structure, you said you started to really define that structure of piano at your 6th year of conservatory.
Well, the full course was actually 10 years long, like we said in the first part of the series.
So you're not including that first. So I have that note. It says 11. We talked about that 11 years, but that first year is the musicology experiment.
No, but to get at the same time, I was enrolled in the conservatory.
Oh, that's already right. You were dual enrolled. That's right.
Yeah. So let's say I was only studying piano for the first 6 years of conservatory, and from the 6th to 7th year, I enrolled also in a jazz studies course, and after the jazz studies, after my bachelor degree, I got into composition. So it's a 6 + 3 + 2, 11.
Cool. So it's okay. So
kind of convolute, but yes.
Right. So I'm just kind of reframing myself here with your ability to pick things up on. I'm looking at my notes, so while I'm looking off camera, comparing like your beginnings of piano and doing everything by ear, how did you enjoy, or what was your framework when you stepped into jazz studies?
That was another thing I felt the need to do after my first experience with, so to say, classical piano performance. Because I started out like that and I really enjoyed it for a long time. But after a while, I've always felt, I've been always improvising, you know, right. It was something that I really, I've always been doing that. And at some point I said, I want to do something that involves improvisation and study some subject and some major that involves improvisation. And unfortunately, the only one that really involves improvisation on an active level is jazz studies, because we don't do that in classical music, unfortunately. And this is probably another chapter for my late years, let's say. But yeah, that has been a problem for me, because I always loved to improvise also in classical styles, although I didn't know anything about it. I was just, you know, like always in my life, just playing around with things. But and And that's the reason why I enrolled in jazz studies, because I was really attracted to the idea of improvising music at the piano. And jazz was the only major that allowed me to study it methodically.
That's amazing. You know, as you're communicating this, I really sense from when you first started with the piano at your home in Tuscany, in the Tuscan Hills, you know, it sounds like your fingers were communicating such a different plane of language, not playing like airplane, but a different level of language comprehension that maybe your brain wasn't able to really structure that formally till you got into the conservatory, to where you actually were able to transcribe that language.
That's exactly, I really love the way you put that, because it's exactly like that. I started giving a name to things that I already somehow felt, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we're feeling that we're on the same page on that,
Totally.
because I think in music it really transcends, it can transcend the human plane of existence if you let it, and you allow yourself to really embrace well, not only embrace, accept who you are as an artist, whether you're playing euphonium, which it would be amazing, but any musical, anything you do in life, if you truly embrace it, you lose yourself, and you lose you and you, like, it's a different plane of existence that we allow ourselves to escape what's happening, kind of like in video games, but better, because it's our life, it's our body, and it's
Yes.
and for those that are watching this, go into the podcast. We talk about AI and talk about the Tale of the Phoenix, and I won't dive into that any more than I just did. Go check that out, because you'll understand this in a better comprehension. And if you don't come back years later, maybe you will. It's just amazing. It's interesting. Wow, really exciting. So going from jazz studies, what was that next level that you went from there? Did you feel like you explored what you needed to explore during that time of jazz studies?
Yes and no, because like I said, the good thing about that major was that I was finally put improvisation into practice, which sounds weird, but it's actually how it is. And but it's also the limitation, because it was limited to jazz music, which I love, by the way, but it's limited to that. You know, you don't really improvise in other styles. There is the way, for example, if you study early music, to do some how's called in English, I forget the name, basso continuo, right? Continuo bass, you know,
Okay,
improvising
right.
on that.
Mhm.
But it's still something that I really haven't figured out until last years of my life here, when I started studying partimento and learning how to improvise in classical styles and all these things. But at that time, I was already here in Germany. But when after my major in jazz studies, I didn't want to go on like with a master degree. And I wanted instead to switch to composition, which, by the way, I was already studying, but not as a major before. So I was taking some courses and so on.
That's awesome. So going back and actually pulling your history of what you actually have published on your website and such like that, what was your actual first written piece that you felt like, okay, that you started owning the identity as a composer?
Oh my God. I think I'm still trying to figure out that.
Oh, wow. Okay, fair enough.
No, I really have. a hard time thinking of what my voice actually is as a composer. You know, I think it's also a very difficult topic, and a lot of composers struggle with that, you know, with the idea of being original, you know. And I have to say, this of course is probably my bias, but this probably also stems from the fact that the academic education, especially in composition, kind of tries so hard to enable composer to be original. And I think, especially in Europe, probably more than in US, we tend to confuse originality with eccentricity. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
And it's really tough, because most of the time, for example, like I said, we've been talking about my background and the kind of music that I grew up with.
Right.
And I always felt, although my teachers were great, composition teacher, I have a so deep respect for my composition teacher, but I've always felt in academy that somehow, you know, if I was writing in a tonal language, for example, that was kind of a stretch, you know. Yeah, okay, you know. It's like I start feeling a bit uncomfortable here, you know. So yeah, and this is a problem for a lot of composers who just happen to like that kind of music, you know. And it's difficult to find a place in the academia if you do that kind of music. So music that in some sense doesn't have a clear research output, you know. Yeah, I don't know if I answered the question, but
you did. So let's kind of dive into that, if we may, here just a little bit more, to kind of wrap up the second in series for the video portion. So as an undefined voice, you feel like you have an undefined voice in particular when it comes to your own compositions, even though you have he has well over 13 on the books as far as works that he sells on his, or provides on his website. And with your search for self, I guess, search for, well, I guess it's the search for identity with your fingers are instrumental to uncovering that identity.
You're so right. You're so right about that. You're so right. And it's amazing that you came up with that, because it's exactly the way I started feeling in the last 1 year, 1.5 years, more or less. And that's also the reason why I started this new concert program, which is about improvising music in different styles and genres, because I've always been thinking, and here again, someone can prove me wrong, and I'm very much open about talking about it, that in order to be a composer, one has to be a musician first. And for me, being a musician means that I have to play piano. Maybe not good. That's another story. But I have to play piano. I need to feel this kind of almost gesture when I play, and that translates when I compose. I would say that I started really but recognizing my own voice and thinking, okay, this composition is my son or my daughter, in the last year, probably after a very bad burnout that I had last year. So Yeah, and that comes also with consequences, because you have to make some decisions and have to, make some compromises also.
Right.
But in the end, it's totally worth it.
It's really interesting that to consider one's work as their son or daughter, their child, their student, in a sense. You know what? That really is remarkable. I'm reflecting that on the inside, right? And as we like as a composer, you put your work out and you're like, okay, this is of my this is my element, and you want it to shine. And it's just like a prodigy or a protege of sorts of those that are in the studio, learning from us as a teacher to a student. And we want our student artists to become better than we are, or student composer artists, in any way. I mean, even in the family, we work as a parent to give them opportunities that we never had before, and to kind of cut that learning curve, right?
Right.
And so I think a composition, how that translates, and let me know if I'm wrong, on the chat, or yourself, Luca. Is this each composition you have, is son or daughter, and you put them forth to give them the light of day, and to the well yeah, it's a phoenix. Each work is a phoenix. It's a rebirthing of what you feel inside. Yeah, this life has some constraints, so yes, you have some little elements, but it's the performer who takes these works on to give it that perspective and that frame of mind, of which you didn't hear that dynamic happen before within that your child or your student or your work before.
Absolutely. And also, that's a good point. And also, I think there is another point, which is the good part and also the bad part, which is this: once you have composed a piece and you finally decide, everybody who, if you have every composer a piece, you know that comes this point in which you have to decide whether you want to publish that or not. At some point, it has to be done, right? And it's exactly like a son of a daughter, I think, even though I don't have any. But once you have it, it's not really yours anymore.
Right. It's like sending them off to college, or
Exactly.
sending them out of the house.
Exactly. It's not yours. You are not in control. Of course, you're parenting, and it's another story. But when a composition comes out, it's not really about only you anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's like
And
they get married to the artist that is performing the piece. They become one with that piece, or at least you hope to have that happen, because you want them to reflect the intentional purpose behind that piece that was originally, set in a framework, and then they have this new light. Wow.
And that's probably why I tell you that I'm struggling. I have always been struggling finding my own voice, probably because I just don't recognize myself fully in my compositions, because they are not me. They are a part of me, but not me.
Exactly. It's like having a child, and me having 5 boys, I can see elements of myself within each of them, and we can, and for the parents that are listening to, hopefully you are can under I hope that this makes sense, and I'm sure it does. But it's we put them out, and they go to school, right? They go to, kindergarten, they start their journey, they find their identity out and about. Just like these recordings will, once they go live, right? They'll go into the world and learn, see different things that we won't be able to see the impact unless they write a link below and let us know where they are watching it from so we can keep tabs on it. It's kind of like a postcard. There you go. It's like a postcard that they drop in.
That's it.
Oh man, that's rich. Wow. It's like a postcard. It's like going back, recapping, everything is always a gift. That is one of the best gifts that your compositions, these videos, these recordings, this is a gift that we're presenting to the world. And whether they hate it or like it, love it, each person in this life has haters. They have doubters. Just like each work has a hater or a doubter, or it's way too difficult, or it's way whatever the excuse is. It's a gift. It's still a gift. And for those to take that opportunity to open that present moment, which, there's 13 right now on his site that are waiting to be adopted. Just not
Well, that escalated quickly.
right. So if you want to, if you want to showcase one of these amazing works, like every single one of our composers, or commission Luca, or give light to an amazing work, because it's not only for perhaps yourself or your student artist, or for a premiere, it's for history. It's kind of like a new Library of Alexandria that we have going on, I think, here, at least, a snippet of what was possible with what was happening in the ancient days at Alexandria, and the ability that, these Zoom recordings, the podcast, all these opportunities to really take advantage of and really put forth our best effort, our best each day. It may be not the best that we have in our life. Like Luca was saying that he had a horrible burnout last year, even. And, out of that, I would have to count up really quick. There's more than a handful of works that he had published between last year and this year. And a rebirth, in a way, a phoenix of sorts. Just to give kind of a background of, what he was able to crank out. I mean, even, wow, knowing that you had a bad burnout, and I hope to, for those that are being burnt out right now, or have those moments of insecurity or doubt or fear, or just really not a really good place in life, to take this podcast, to take this video, and know that Luca has been there. We all have been there, whether or not we've shared it with you yet, and perhaps we will soon enough. But from last year with a horrible burnout, and to really still struggle in a way to find the voice. And it's a lot like, I think it's a lot like how, men specifically, or even women, I mean, everyone goes through kind of a midlife crisis where they feel like they aren't living to their fullest potential or possibility. And this really bridges that really well, because it's not about us in this life. It's about those that are watching. It's about sharing this story, to being that bridge for someone to walk across and not to fall over and plummet into those rabbit holes, because we're here for them in this right here. So if you're going through a hard time, reach out, drop a link below, or message one of us, or talk to your parents or a counselor at school, or someone that you really, really, really trust, not a boyfriend or girlfriend per se, but someone who that with every intention that they have your back, just like these pieces for Luca. Artists can, pick these up and perform, and it's really intriguing that sometimes the artists don't call back and get the permission per se of courting the work and beginning to perform it on a CD or a recital or such, and to understand the intention, the background, I think is really, I hope that makes sense to everyone, because this, I'm these interviews, these conversations have been more like, in a way, philosophical discussions that's really transcendent. And I think it's really important for us to be here for them, not only your works, but as a parent, we're here to be here for our kids, to provide them that platform to launch from.
Absolutely. Also because the musician's job is can be very destructive if you take it the wrong way, because there's no time off, right? It's like being in a seminar, like a priest, that kind of seminar, a convent, right? So you are basically full on every day, and it's very difficult, especially when you reach the point in which your passion starts becoming a job and you start earning money from it. And this is the moment when you have to be very careful, and you have to be very clear with yourself about what you want from that, because there is also this whole trend, let's say, of telling people you have to make a job out of your passion, right? To transform your passion into a job. But that's not always the case. It doesn't always work for everybody. There are a lot of people who are just enjoying keeping it a passion and have another job, and doing something completely different. Like my jazz teacher used to say, you take your brain, you put it somewhere, and you do something else. And then when you come back, you do music and you do your stuff. Yeah. In my personal experience, it wasn't that bad, like on health wise, but it also happened, in that sort of almost middle life crisis. I was like 33 last year, and you start thinking about what you want to do, and so on. So for me, it was more about making a decision whether I wanted to stay inside in the academia or not. And this is a decision that everybody at some point has to make. And I just want to say, if anybody's feeling like that, reach out to me, to the Euphonium Summit, to somebody, because it's important to talk it through with somebody. And there's no solution, unfortunately, but talking, it's a solution.
It is. And there's two solutions. There's talking about it, and then there's the permanent solution that won't fix anything. It'll make it the worst case, everything possible, don't make it permanent. Just because you're going through something temporary right now and it may seem permanent, and it's not. Nothing in this
Absolutely.
life is permanent.
This is like a mind trick, thinking that we are so eager to think that everything nothing ever changes, but it's actually rather the opposite. Everything changes all the time. So yeah, it's not gonna last forever. Absolutely.
So that really wraps it really well up into everything is always a gift. This life, this day that we have, sharing this time with you who are watching and about to go back over into the podcast. So those that are watching, go over and listen to the podcast. This is officially at, in the podcast terms, this is going to be at the 1 minute and 17 mark. So if you want to fast forward it as you go back over to catching up back on there and seeing what I was talking about earlier. I want to thank everybody for joining us on this International Euphonium Summit series, the Living History series, with our guest in part 2 of Luca Sutto and his journey from the hills of Tuscany to Germany and beyond, and some really amazing things about to happen. So I want to thank you for watching, and take part and do good, serve well. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.